It sure is, Colin, and it's a lot of fun too. I really enjoy every second that I'm learning something new. And it reminds me of Jim Rohn. Jim Rohn liked to talk about the seasons of life. And I think that there are seasons of learning also. So, what comes after winter? Well, spring. And I think that we're entering the spring of our seasons of learning. And there's
And some bull run
always,
action.
yeah, And so we're entering this spring. And then what comes after spring? Summer. And what happens in summer? At the end of summer, it's time to harvest. So, I think that's what we're going to talk about today is, we're exiting the winter and we're entering the spring. And, what opportunities are there before us in this new crypto spring? Well, there's a lot of opportunities, everyone. I mean, everywhere we look, there are new opportunities. And it pays to revisit some themes from the past so that we can more clearly understand where things could be headed in the future. And, I really wanted to focus on some of the themes that I see playing out in the charts. When it comes to the native DEX tokens in this week's end of week investor report. And what I think we could be witnessing is the start of a new bull run in some of the largest DEXs. And these DEXs that I highlighted in the report and that we took a look at as a team are just the top 5 by fees generated over a 24-hour period. And so we were taking a look at Uniswap, PancakeSwap, Radium, Trader Joe, and SushiSwap. And there's a reason why we're focused on these top 5 by fees generated. And the reason is, when we're taking a look at new opportunities, we really want to make sure that we're allocating our capital to DEXs that we think are going to be around not just tomorrow, but months and years from now. And so what we were taking a look at was, well, if we're right, and if there is a new DEX bull run upon us, if we're exiting that winter phase and entering the spring phase, well, then we want to allocate our capital only to the DEXs that are going to perform best. And what opportunities do we see potentially in these DEXs? Well, we can take a look first and foremost at the native DEX tokens. And it's so interesting to me because we're seeing the same type of pattern play out across each one of these native DEX tokens. And that pattern is a consolidation phase that looks to me like it's ending with a big spike in volume and a swing back to the upside in price. So whether we're looking at the Uniswap native DEX token, or we're looking at Sushi, the SushiSwap native DEX token, or we're taking a look at Ray, the Radium native DEX token, or it's Joe, the Trader Joe native DEX token, or it's Sushi, the SushiSwap native DEX token. Whether we're looking at any of these 5, the pattern remains the same. And well, how do we play this? And I pulled out a couple of different pools, and I've entered each of these pools with a small amount of capital to test it. I want to test the water, so to speak. And what I've seen from my testing of these different pools is I really like the Cake BNB pool. The only thing that I'm a little concerned about with Cake BNB is the performance of BNB. And we can dive into that in a little bit, but BNB may not be following the rest of the market higher, at least in the immediate term. So that's one consideration there. But the Ray Solana pool, that's performing extremely well. The Trader Joe pool with Joe wrapped AVAX, that's the top performer of all of them. And the Sushi pool has been performing well also. The Uniswap pool has been the lowest performer for me so far. And remember, this is all based on the range that you select. But the thing that I was most interested in talking about during this week's end of week investor report wasn't so much the pools themselves, because performance varies greatly depending on the range that you select. And these are not by any means the only pools available to gain exposure to these native DEX tokens. But what I really wanted to talk about was why I think these 5 DEXs present opportunities, not just today, but over the next several months. As we exit this crypto winter and enter this new DEX bull market and a new crypto spring, I want to have allocations to the DEXs that are going to perform best. And that means I need to understand how they're generating revenue, and I need to know that their business models are sustainable. And so what we've seen over the last 180 days or so is significant growth in these DEXs. And we're starting to see TVLs tick up a little bit, just a little bit. So let's take a look at these. These are the DEXs that we should all be familiar with as DeFi investors, because this is ranked by TVL. So the bottom of the list is Trader Joe. That's a $112 million DEX, according to this DeFi Llama data. That is a lot of money. That's a significant TVL. But at the very top of the list, 3.72 billion, that's Uniswap. But these numbers pale in comparison to the all-time high TVL numbers. Uniswap, for example, was a $12 billion DEX almost exactly 2 years ago. The all-time high in these DEX TVLs was November 30th, 2 years ago. So November 30th, 2021 was the all-time high, right around $80 billion. And so, if we're right, and if we're starting to see the end of this crypto winter and the beginning of the crypto spring, and a new season is upon us, and we're starting to see the trends swing to the upside, well, maybe those all-time highs for DEX TVLs, maybe that could be in play. If we're sitting at a total TVL for all DEXs of, what is it, Lucas, maybe 12 billion?
Yeah, I think it's 12.8 or something.
Yeah, if we're sitting at 12.8 right now, but we know that the all-time high just for Uniswap during the last bull market was 12 billion, just for Uniswap. Well, then who's to say that that all-time high couldn't be in play again? And if it is in play, well, then the all-time high for the entire DEX space of 80 billion, that could be in play also. And what does that mean for us as DeFi investors? Well, it means that we want to make sure that we're allocating our assets only to the DEXs that have staying power. And in order to understand whether they have staying power or not, we need to know how they're generating revenue. And as a general rule of thumb, these DEXs generate revenue through swap fees, farm fees, pool fees, staking fees, different types of fees that are generated. And that reminds me, I think that this is important. This is an important aside, just like a side note, but I want to mention it real quick. So, my mentors in options trading spent decades on the floor in the SIBO trading options, and they used to always talk about spreads and how you could, in the 80s and 90s, quote, drive a truck through the spreads. And what that meant was that the spreads were really wide. And the way that that applies to what we do in DeFi is when we have a 0.3% fee tier or a 1% fee tier, that's equivalent to the spread. And I think that as we're going to start to see a significant inflow of fresh capital into crypto as a whole, and specifically into DEXs, I believe that we're going to start to see the spreads compress. And so what I believe is going to happen is these margins that these DEXs are enjoying now are going to be compressed. And what that means to me as an analyst is these DEXs need to have a more diversified source of revenues over and above just fee collection. So that's why I'm taking a look at their business models in this report and asking myself the question, do I think they're going to be around tomorrow? And if the answer is yes, then I'm comfortable allocating capital to those DEXs. And that's why I highlighted just these top 5. Now, this isn't to say that there aren't other DEXs that could present exciting and interesting new opportunities. There certainly are. But when there are 5 DEXs across many different chains, whether we're talking about Binance Smart Chain with PancakeSwap, or Avalanche with Trader Joe, or Ethereum with Uniswap, or Solana with Radium, or SushiSwap as a multi-chain DEX. But I really wanted to make sure that I'm able to spread my assets across chains and spread my assets across DEXs that are going to be here tomorrow. So that was really the idea with this end of week investor report. And I hope that I know that there's a lot of information to bring all at once to everyone in the community, but I hope that provides some context to my thought process in this report, and hopefully some clarity to why we're selecting some of the pairs on the specific DEXs that we're working on. So I hope that made sense to everyone.